Petrochemicals are chemicals derived from crude oil and natural gas. The toxic practice of the petrochemical industry is negatively affecting us all, and our environment and climate change is drastically changing on a global scale. Petrochemical plants and refineries emit 10 to 15% of the carbon pollution that is driving our climate change. We are the consumers in which these industries continue to profit from. The petrochemical industry produces plastics, fertilizers, pesticides, gasoline, cosmetics, and a plethora of more chemicals that are a part of our everyday use in this society. These chemical plants have strategically been placed in what are called sacrifice zones, predominantly along the Gulf Coast and the Ohio River Valley, putting Black and brown people and poor communities at risk of environmental health and economic hardships, and too often causing death. When I think of New Orleans, I think of great music, famous desserts, and Mardi Gras. There's nothing like dancing on Bourbon Street and embracing the culture of the Big Easy. But there is nothing easy when it comes to these community activists breathing life into their call to action. Founder of Rise St. James, Sharon Levine, twin sisters and co-founders of the Descendants Project, Joe and Joy Banner, and founder of Concerned Citizens of St. John, Mr. Robert Taylor, are a part of the solution as they legally battle it out with giant petrochemical companies like Formosa Plastics and Greenfield, Louisiana, LLC. These brave souls are not only on the front lines, but they are also residential neighbors to these toxic chemical plants who continue to invade the neighborhoods of St. John the Baptist Parish and St. James Parish.
I've been here all my life in St. James Parish, and we were living the life of Raleigh. It was like an American dream. And we had gardens, we had chickens, we had cows, we had all our livestock, and we had all our vegetables. And we weren't sick. When you walk out the door, you could breathe that fresh air. Everybody was fine, and we could drink the water. We could drink the water from the hydrant.
The economy in St. John the Baptist Parish was basically agrarian, sugarcane for the most part. So I grew up in sugarcane fields. They abounded. Our parents worked in the sugar industry, my parents did, and we lived. This was plantation life. It was natural.
I remember a greater sense of more community. Just being outside more often. I do remember some pollution, but not as much. I particularly remember going along the River Road and seeing more historical homes, seeing more just available land, but not as much industry. So when we were 10 years old, Formosa, which is a rayon facility, had plans to move into our neighborhood, but it meant that we would have to leave. Now looking back at it, I realize how they were strategic about who they were communicating with.
In 1990, former St. John the Baptist Parish president and convicted offender Lester Millay pushed forth a zoning law where hundreds of acres that were zoned for residential use would become industrial after its sale to Formosa Plastics in Wallace, Louisiana. For decades, Formosa has been intrusively coming into these residential neighborhoods, giving residents no choice but to leave or be subjected to the toxic chemicals.
This land is zoned residential. So in order to make the land appropriate for Formosa to use, the zoning had to be switched to heavy industry. Through coercion and corruption, that was done.
The parish officials voted to make this future industrial. Where my home is, that was residential commercial. And they voted to make this future industrial. That's why this plant can come in here.
It's very important that we begin to organize politically to select our own representatives and then go out and elect them. very important for us is the selection. Do not let the petrochemical industry select the candidates.
The politicians is the reasons we are being poisoned and we are dying. Give thanks to them, we are dying.
After discovering Formosa Plastics planned to spend $9.4 billion to build more chemical plants in St. James Parish, Sharon Levine acted and formed her organization Rise St. James. She has been on a mission, being steadfast in her fight to stop Formosa.
In my mind, I kept saying, you can fight anything in this world. You don't have to settle for what somebody's giving you or dumping on you. And I said, if you don't fight, how are you going to win?
The petrochemical industry was set up by design to follow suit of the plantation industry. Yesterday it was sugarcane and cotton. Today it's petrochemicals, oil, and gas. It uses the same blueprint as the plantation owners when it comes to environmental racism and economic hardships and profiting off the labor of Black and brown people. It is by no coincidence that the slave plantations that once ran up and down the Mississippi River is now home to the petrochemical industry and their toxic chemical plants.
So the connection between plantations and plants is a very direct connection because many of the chemical plants and manufacturing facilities, heavy industrial sites located on the grounds of plantations. So that made plantations very attractive for them. The land was already cleared. It was next to the Mississippi River. And plus you had a state, and a local politics that's more interested in profit than people. So all of these little slivers represent the different plantations along the Mississippi on both sides. What I think is interesting is that if you compare the Baton Rouge to Mississippi side versus the New Orleans to the Baton Rouge side, there's a lot more density in this area, density of plantations than there is right here. So it just shows you how much plantations or how many different plantations there were in this area. And this is Cancer Alley.
As in the days of slavery, Black people are building this industry on their backs with hard labor. And now it's multinational oil, coal, and gas corporations who accumulate all the wealth. Black people in these communities are handed life-altering health issues that cause a shorter lifespan, death, low qualities of education, low to no income to survive, and highly polluted air, food, and water. The Gulf Coast of Louisiana is not called Cancer Alley for no reason. According to EPA's National Air Toxic Assessment published in 2014, these residents getting cancer from being exposed to the toxic air pollution was 95% higher than most Americans.
If you look to the other side of the river, to the east bank, we have multiple plants, multiple pollutant-causing, particulate matter-causing plants already here. We particularly struggle with one of the plants that produces an aluminum, and it creates a red dust. It was formerly Noranda, I think it's called Atlantic. So when the wind is blowing just right, and by just right I mean just blowing, that dust and that particulate matter comes over to our properties. I mean, if you look at some of the rooftops or the roofing, you will see the red dust. If you look at the cars, you'll see red dust on them. So that's one of the big issues we have. Imagine if you're seeing it on your car or in your home, imagine what's going in your lungs. The grain terminal, should it locate here, would be a change because that water, that storm water, would run off directly, would drain directly into the lake, Lake des Almonds. That is, Lake des Almonds is a cultural treasure. It's also an economic treasure because a lot of Louisiana's famous seafood comes from Lake des Almonds.
We began to notice the effects of trying to drink the water. And we saw the deformed fish, the unnatural things about the catfish that we had known for so long. We realized it was because of the chemicals that these plants were dumping directly into the river.
Now, you better not drink that water from the hydrant because it's polluted with chemicals. I know one chemical that's in the water is benzene, and benzene is cancer causing. and formaldehyde and a whole bunch of other chemicals.
The environmental racism and harm that this industry is spewing out seems to have no boundaries when it comes to people of color.
I've been seeing that yellow pile up there for years, not knowing what that smell was when you pass by. It's affecting the community big time, because we just had a chemical leak last month, I think. The chemicals are so strong, sometime when you pass at night between 12 and 3, it's like a smog that's over the highway and you can't even hardly see the white lines on the road because it's so thick and you think it's fog. Come to find out it was coming from the plant.
Right now, Miss, to be honest with you, I'm short-winded right now, and I would say it's the plants because I did work along with my brother. But I was a little bolder than my brother, and I told him, I am not working inside the tank anymore. You need to put me up there with the white fellas because they was preserving the white guys and having us working as African Americans inside the tank. So you know what that does? That shortens our life. So my brother, he was working in a chemical plant that produced gas and oil. So benzene was the main reason why I would say that he suffered a liver disease from working inside the tanks, cleaning them out.
When I was diagnosed September the 6th, 2016, I started my radiation November the 13th on my birthday for 6 weeks. December the 12th was my last day of radiation. And then I had to take a pill called tamoxifen for 5 years. This area here is full of cancer patients and people just don't know them until they say it.
I have had prostate cancer and I have had one of my legs amputated. I think part of all this was caused through the chemicals that they're releasing in the air, the toxic chemicals they're releasing in the air. I think they have a part to do with it. And my brother, he had prostate cancer also. And my wife, she died of breast cancer. So they see my family. And my wife, she used to work in a chemical plant. My brother, he used to work in a chemical plant. So they all got contribution for catching the cancer. I also worked at a chemical plant.
I didn't know I was being polluted and poisoned from all these chemicals. I found out in 2016 that I was being polluted by industry when I went to the doctor. And he told me I had autoimmune hepatitis. So that's when I did my research and it said it came from industrial pollutants. Then the next year I had aluminum in my body. Then months later I had lead in my body. And now I'm being tested for plastic in my blood. So I'm tested for just about everything. And it's not just me, there's a whole lot of people in St. James that don't know that they have all these chemicals in their bodies.
By purchasing majority of the farmland in these communities, these plants are causing schools and businesses to close, leaving these residents in St. John and St. James Parish with minimal work options. And companies like Formosa have no concern or worry about building plants on sacred land where Black slaves are known to be buried.
We thought that it might be graves on the site. Somebody made that statement. And so we asked for record requests. And we talked to the archaeologists. When the archaeologists told us that there are grave sites on Formosa site. Formosa did not tell the parish council that they found skull and human bones. They didn't tell them that. So we went to court, not to court, to the parish council meeting, December the 23rd, 2019. I never forget it because I had my paper reading it because I'm not a public speaker, so I read. So I read my whole thing and telling them about the grave site. They just look at you. Next item, like it was nothing we were telling them.
They eating up all the land, and that causing school closures. See what I'm saying? And our kids, we need school. They need the education. The future don't look too bright for the kids in this area at all.
we had a high school that was right in the area. They let the plant came in, bought that. Then the kids now got to get up a half hour earlier in the morning to go to school that's not even here in our area. So why would you take these children and have them go to school a half hour like they got a job? And it's hard. My great-grandson, he got to leave the house in the morning, and it's like he got to go 20 miles one way, then he got to go 20 miles another way before he can get back to the school. And he's sleeping half the time on the bus because it's so early in the morning, and I'm talking about a 5-year-old. We don't even have a post office in the area. They took that from us too and gave that to a plant. The nearest post office is 20 miles from my house. So the nearest store is 20 miles from my house. We should not have to live like that.
The fight is just beginning for these community activists in St. John the Baptist and St. James parishes. And although the battle against this giant petrochemical industry has been uphill, they have come out on top with some great triumphs. Joe and Joy Banner recently had a victory in court, putting a pause on a grain elevator being built on the same land that was sold to Formosa Plastics in 1990. Sharon Levine and her Rise St. James organization's fight against Formosa Plastics is not going unnoticed, as she is giving Formosa a contending challenge by delaying their plans to build a $9.4 billion chemical facility in St. James. Sharon Levine and Rise St. James is proving on a world stage that the community's voice, homes, and lives matter in St. James Parish.
Well, we, with our attorneys, we filing a Clean Air Act lawsuit, and the judge ordered Formosa attorneys and our attorneys to do a proposal. That's going on right now. And then the Army Corps of Engineers ordered Formosa EIS, Environmental Impact Statement. So that's going to take about a year or two. So I think we're looking good. I think we're in the process of stopping it.
Whoever signing these papers for these plants, they are not working for the people. They are working to line their pockets. But us as a community, we're gonna fight for our property, our children, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren. We don't want our children to keep leaving here. Once they keep living here, then we don't have a lot of people to fight with. But like I said, you don't need a lot of people to move a mountain. You just need a few good people.
It's important to us that everyone knows our area is more than just a part of Cancer Alley. This is our home. This is not just a place where disease occurs. This is a place where life occurs. And history occurred and still happening. And we're deeply rooted here because we know the land is protected.
Some of them say, Carl, you know you're going against those plants. Those plants have billions of dollars. I said, well, I got something better than the plants. I have the good Lord on my side. So it don't bother me. And I'm gonna fight. I'm not gonna die, just give up and roll over and die. No, I'm gonna fight. Before I die, I'm gonna fight.
My name is Yvette Mariano.
Christopher Grace, Joe Damon,
Dr. Joy
Dustin
White. And I will continue to fight for environmental, climate, and racial justice until we can all breathe again.